Good afternoon, everyone. I, Priyanka Sharma, on behalf of NEN and Vadhwani Foundation, would like to welcome you all for this webinar. Every entrepreneur knows that it's hard to overstate the importance of marketing. From hot new startup to local stores, every type of business can benefit from the increased sales and heightened brand awareness that a great marketing campaign can offer. Today, we have Ms. Amita Singh, who would help you to understand the marketing nuances to grow your business and mean and ways of effective marketing. Amita is a senior marketing professional with two decades of experience across industries, including entrepreneurial stint for 7 years with an extensive focus on branding and digital marketing. Before I hand over the floor to Amita, here are a few reminders for the audience. You will all be on mute. You may ask questions by typing in panel provided or if you wish to speak to the speaker directly, then you may click on the raise hand button. You will be provided the audio access only when Q&A session will begin. Kindly maintain the list of attendees of the session and share with us. Also, please ensure to fill in the feedback once the webinar is over. Now over to you, Amita.
Thank you, Priyanka.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amita Singh. I think Priyanka has done justice by giving a quick introduction on what I do. So right now, I'm just going to try and focus on marketing, specifically online marketing. And my assumption is that most of you out there are early stage entrepreneurs or wanting to be entrepreneurs. Like Priyanka mentioned, it's extremely critical for any startup to get their marketing right. So I'm going to start off with this quote. Marketing takes a day to learn. Unfortunately, it takes a lifetime to master. That's a quote by Philip Kotler, but I would like to change it a bit. Marketing doesn't take a day to learn, and it doesn't take a lifetime to master. Marketing is an ongoing process. You keep learning, you keep adapting, and in today's day and age, the way technology changes, it's extremely important to understand how people are evolving around technologies. So I always say that I like to focus on the psychology of people. The channels will take care of themselves. So we have 60 minutes, so I'm not going to have enough time, we are not going to have enough time to either master marketing or even learn a little bit of marketing. So in terms of expectations, I'm hoping that in the 16 minutes, I would be able to leave you with some thought starters and not really art of mastering marketing or online marketing. So I'm hoping that it'll be a session that will be useful to some. I know that I will learn quite a bit. Every time there is a chance to impart knowledge, I learn a lot more. So please make sure that you have your questions all written down, and I look forward to, most importantly, the Q&A session towards the end of this. So let's talk about marketing. What is marketing? If you want to define, is it a process to create a need, or is it a mechanism to fulfill a need? Now, obviously, there are different definitions of marketing, but if you want to try and understand what it is, it may be one of these two. Which one do you think it is? The first one is true. This marketing is always the process you use to create a need for the product. So then what is the mechanism to fulfill the need that's created by marketing? That is sales. And you will notice in most professional environment, sales and marketing are used together, and it's very, very important as professionals to understand the difference. So we are going to focus on marketing, which is the process to create a need for any product, any brand, any service, any company that you're going to be marketing in the open space. So if we're talking about the process to create a need, let's talk about what to begin with. So what is this process that marketing needs to focus on? My main thing, like I mentioned earlier, it is the human psychology. At any given time, when you're talking about marketing, when you're even thinking marketing, please remember to remind yourself that we are at the end of the day dealing with human beings, and it is important to constantly be curious about how human beings function, how they think, the psychology behind what human beings do. We move on to the how. The how, there are different aspects to it. Now, taking very clearly digital or online marketing into a perspective, the process to create a need using marketing is fivefold. You create it by listening, by analyzing, by responding, evangelizing, and acting. I'll go into more details of that in just a bit. The third aspect is where. Now, where is a slightly complex or an extremely simple question to answer. Where is definitely channels. Now, the channels could be offline channels, online channels. So the where is always flexible. It is also flexible because the kind of world we live in, the channels of communicating to human beings at different times keep changing, keep evolving. So the main constant is not the what, not the where. It's the how. If you can master the art of the how, the psychology bit and the channels can keep changing, and it will keep changing. So if you are looking at the human psychology aspect for a soft drink, it is extremely different from if you're selling a software, right? So the psychology changes, the channels change, but the how remains the same. So in today's session, I'm going to try and share some bit of, again, thought starters on the how. So let's look at the how. We're talking about listen, analyze, respond, evangelize, act. So I'm going to focus on the listen, respond, and evangelize, and then we will touch upon act and analyze after that. If you're talking about listen, you need to define what do you want to hear. Okay, so if you're talking about the online space, let's take Twitter as a channel. Now, if you're going to be creating a presence for your brand on Twitter, then what do you want to actually listen about your brand? So you actually put down certain keywords and key phrases and start looking for conversations around that. So you always start by defining what you want to hear. If you're talking about respond, it's important for you to actually define what you want to say. So once again, if you're selling, say, a soft drink, then it's important for you to actually define what you want to say about the soft drink, right? Finally, evangelize. What is the meaning of evangelize? Well, evangelize is basically having somebody talk about you or use your product and unashamedly advertise about it. So it's important. So you can have good evangelism, you can have bad evangelism. End of the day, people will talk about your product. So, one may say that as long as they're talking, it's fine. But as a marketer, as a professional marketer, it's important for you to put down what you want to see. How do you want to see people evangelizing your product? So if you put that down, then you can build a roadmap towards it. Otherwise, it's very likely that you will lose control of your brand, and it'll be the market pushing you and your brand towards a particular journey, and you will have no control over it. So moving on, how do you do this? How do you actually, make sure that you listen well, you respond well, and you make sure that things are being evangelized the way you want them to? So you start steering the thought process of your target audience. Again, I will say the human beings you're actually looking at, the way the people think. You start steering the way they think by steering conversations. Now again, when I say steering conversations, it's important to start certain conversations. and you have to be in control of what conversations you start. Think of yourself as a storyteller who is interacting with the audience constantly. So you steer conversations. How do you do that? You steer conversations by choosing the right words. So it's important to define what words you want your brand or your product to be associated with. You steer conversations by drawing the correct imagery. For example, the imagery, the visuals, the colors a Pepsi would use is extremely different from what a Mercedes would use. So the kind of imagery would be distinctly different. How is that even possible? That's because they have been defined. They have been predefined. You steer conversations by showing actions. So if you are a bold brand, if you are a product that stands for adventure, you actually show that particular value of the brand by actions. So now all these things are, again, if you try and visualize them in the online world, it's important to consistently make sure the right words, the right imagery, and the right actions are being spoken about and spread word of mouth by people, by your consumers, by your customers. So if you're talking about the where, which is the channels, I'm going to briefly touch upon this. In today's world, you have social, you have people. So basically, where are human beings spending most time on? We are spending time on random mobile apps. You have online marketing. So you're talking about sending people or attracting people to your website, to different areas where your brand is present. And of course, there is the whole concept of marketing team, plan, vision. So what channel or what path, especially as a startup, should you focus on? Because it can be extremely confusing, right? So here's my 2-bit of how you should go about doing this. Because when you start a business, when you're an entrepreneur, you're bootstrapped, you have limited money, limited resources, limited time. So are there any guidelines on how you can maximize on this? This is something that I have learned and used in my experience, so I'm going to put it out there and then we can have a conversation about it. My first suggestion and recommendation to anybody would be to declutter your choices. How do you declutter your choices? Because, well, there are so many channels. Everybody is present everywhere. You prioritize. The way you declutter your choices is you prioritize. In just a bit, I will also touch upon how you can prioritize. You maximize on your resources. If you have 1 hour to spend in a day on marketing, what is that one thing you absolutely need to do that is non-negotiable? Bring that up on the board, put it up there, and do it every day for that 1 hour. When your resources increase, you can add channels, or you can make sure that that one thing you're doing, you take it to the next level. But make sure that you are prioritizing and you are maximizing the resources that you have access to. Find out where your customer, first of all, find out who your customers are, right? Then find out where is your customer spending the most time. Now you could say that my customer is a 20-year-old in urban India. Where is that 20-year-old spending maximum time online? Again, you may come up with answers which are 4 to 5 channels that that particular 20-year-old or 20-year-olds like that spend time on. So how do you choose channels? You find out who are your competitors. In any field, no matter how unique your idea is, there will be competitors. So find out, define who your competitors are, find out where your competitors are. So it's extremely important to look at two aspects, one from the customer's perspective, the other from the competitor's perspective. The reason I'm saying you have to focus on competitors, because typically from a philosophical standpoint, it's well and good to say, forget what competitors are doing. I stand for who I am and I do what I do. But from a process standpoint, from a reality standpoint, there are competitors out there, and it is important for you, for your brand, to gain as much visibility with your customers as against competitors. That's why it's important for you to find out where your competitors are. Now notice, I am not at any point recommending you to find out what your competitors are doing, because then you will fall into the trap of constantly reacting to what competition is doing. So you just focus on yourself, focus on your customer, find out where your competitors are. So what do you do then? How do you choose the channels? My first recommendation would be to pick one or two channels, and these one or two channels have to be top on list where your customers are. Either they're top on list where your customers are, or you know for a fact that your customers spend X amount of time doing a specific task or engaging in a particular way in that one or two channels every single day. So it need not be that your customer spends 70% of their time online on Facebook. That doesn't necessarily become your primary channel. It could be that your customer is spending 20 minutes a day on LinkedIn every single day, reading one article. Now there is an opportunity for you to tap there. So make sure you choose the channel based on your customers. Second, all other channels where your competitors are, you create basic profiles and consistent profiles. And on all these from all these channels, you direct anybody to your top two channels where you're going to put in your resources. So that is important for you to figure out and diligently follow. Because remember, you do have limited resources and you don't want to be lost at the end of the day in the noise and the clutter that is available today. Any form of marketing is as easy or as tough as you want to make it out to be. So if you are going to be focused on the psychology of your consumers and your customers and very pragmatic about the resources that you have, you will be able to find answers. Now, here's an interesting thing. While I've said pick one or two channels where your customers are, you will get some amount of pressure either from within the startup, within your team, or from yourself to create presence on Facebook or have a flashy website because it seems glamorous. Did you know there are businesses today that run without even a website or social media presence, but doing business online? There are businesses today that purely exist on WhatsApp. There are businesses today that purely exist on Snapchat. Who would have thought that? I don't think the founders of WhatsApp or even Snapchat, even in their wildest dream, realize that their product will be used as a sole channel for business. I'm going to leave that there because I'd like you to think about what kind of businesses can actually use either of these channels and be doing really well. Think about it, and maybe it's something for you to go back and do a little bit of research on how someone can think a little bit different and be able to exponentially grow their business purely from a marketing innovation standpoint. So to reiterate, make sure that you pick channels where your customers are and where you will be able to maximize your resources. And make sure that you have some basic presence in almost all channels where your competitors exist. Because remember, tomorrow if you get access to resources, it's important to be seen as somebody, some brand that has always been there or has been there for a while. So I would strongly recommend that even if you're not going to be using the channels, you should definitely have a presence there. So, reiterating, at the end of the day, make sure marketing is a process to create a need. While we can define something like that, you have to make sure that you keep reminding yourself that you're dealing with human beings, and it's important to understand the psychology of your consumers. Let's look at the ACT stand. So we're talking about listen, analyze, respond, evangelize, and act. I'm going to briefly touch upon ACT, and then we can probably open out for Q&A. So when you're talking about ACT, so here's the summary of what I've just run you by. You, as a process for marketing, you have to define what you want to hear, what all you want to keep track of, how and what you want to respond or speak, and what kind of actions you want to see your consumers or the users of your brand participating in. So when you're talking about ACT, it's important to act continuously. Constantly collect videos from your consumers, words from your consumers, so it could be quotes. So constantly keep collecting data for yourself, for use, because end of the day, when you're talking about online, when you're talking about digital, it is easy to amplify if you have content. And it is difficult to create original content. It is easier to collect what content people are talking about when they're talking about your brand. Collect blogs that are relevant to you, people who are talking about not just your brand, but your area. Make sure your priority to be mentioned in tweets and posts are right up there. So when you're collecting, the other part of ACT is you always create a true voice about your brand. How do you do that? You always experiment, because remember, you have limited resources. So always experiment. When you're experimenting, constantly track the experiment. It could be a 1-week experiment on Facebook, but track it every single day. And I've told this, I've given this as advice to various startups who fare pretty well when they use this as a thumb rule. Even if it's a 1-week experiment that you're running, when I say experiment, I'm talking about like say a paid campaign for 500 rupees, not large amounts. But it's important in that 500 rupees to track how people are behaving and responding to what you're running. And that's where the psychology part comes back in. If it's doing well, start feeding that particular experiment. When I say feeding, start using that particular campaign or style across your different channels and start adding your resources to that particular experiment. Only then will you see the growth. You will see the growth if you feed the right experiments. And it's a constant process. You experiment, track, feed, grow the campaign, move back again to experiment mode constantly. Put it down in your calendar that every first Monday I'm going to start a new experiment. That's how you make sure, one, you're very, very well tuned with your audience. And the second is that you're constantly creating small little success stories that will grow to become wildfires within the kind of marketing that you want to be known for. That's pretty much it. It's a small little thought starter on marketing itself. I'm going to, open it out for Q&A. I guess Priyanka can step in and facilitate the Q&A. Thank you, everyone. I hate post-lunch sessions. I'm hoping that none of you have been snoring while I've been talking. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Amita. So we'll move forward to the Q&A session. So there are some questions. I'll read it out and you just answer them. So first question is it necessary to keep your marketing strategy ready before the starting up? Hello.
I would say, yeah, I got that. So is it necessary to have your marketing strategy ready before you start up? See, it's like a chicken and egg story. Unless you understand what your product is and how you're going to market it, you won't have a marketing strategy. However, what I will say you should definitely do when you're ideating itself is start talking to as many customer types. So if you're going to develop a product for children who are between the age groups of 7 and 13, put yourself in situations where you're talking to the 7 and 13-year-olds constantly. And when you're doing that, make sure you track every bit of conversation and revisit it as a team. And especially if you're starting up, make sure you're discussing it with your founders and co-founders. That will give you a good foundation to build a marketing strategy when you're ready with your startup. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, Amita. So next question is, what is the key way to confirm that my marketing strategy is a success? Like how it is confirmed that this customer is satisfied with my marketing strategy?
Okay, that's a nice question. I'll just reword it slightly. How do you define the success of any marketing strategy? And it could be any marketing strategy. Your marketing strategy is successful when you've created a need for your product. So I'll take the example of the iPod. When Apple came up with the iPod, okay, it was not a product that people desperately needed or missed in their lives. But when it was launched, once it was launched, people couldn't think about how they even survived without an iPod. So a marketing strategy is successful, you can consider it successful if you've created a buzz, you've created a feeling of need for the consumers you're talking about, the target audience you're talking about. So not necessarily a natural progression would be sales, definitely, but sales is a completely different animal. You're talking about how do you sell to people, how do you reach out distribution channels, and various other things. So there are too many aspects to that. It's a completely different topic. But marketing is successful when you've created that particular need and people are waiting or asking or talking about your product.
Okay, so next question is digital marketing necessary these days for business in all domains?
Digital marketing is not necessary for businesses in all domains. Uh, and specifically if you're talking about India here, there are a lot of domains that don't need digital marketing at all. Uh, a classic example would be a quick service restaurant model, which is based on a franchisee. They're going to do brilliantly well without, forget digital marketing, without really marketing. It's just word of mouth and consistent food. There are a lot of areas where you don't need digital marketing at all. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, so we have next question like I am planning to start an art school. What can be best way of marketing the venture?
So if you're planning to start an art school, first of all, I would ask myself a question. Am I a social enterprise? Am I a pure capitalistic business person? Or am I a not-for-profit organization? Uh, that's a key question I would ask myself. Before starting any business, I mean, I won't call it startup, but any business, I would ask myself, why am I doing this and why am I compelled to do this? So to answer your question, how should I market it, or is it the right thing to do? You will know whether it's the right thing to do. And I'm all for knowledge and learning. So any school I think which can actually teach people is brilliant. So it really depends on what you want to do and why you want to do it.
Okay, so next question is which is the most approaching medium or a channel to market the product?
So, well, the most, I don't know, I mean, there's no most approaching medium to market a product because it really depends on what domain your product is, who your target audience is. So like I mentioned earlier, it's important to know who your customer is and where your customer spends time. So there is no one answer fits all kind of response to this. So it's important for you to go out there and find out what the people you're targeting are doing. Where are they spending most time online? And then pick that one channel which you think is compelling enough, and you have the resources to market using that particular medium. I hope that answers.
Okay, Amita. So this is the end of the question and answer session. I guess no more questions are coming. So, okay, so I would thank you. I would like to thank you, Amita, for the inspiring session. It was really helpful. Thank you to all the our attendees for participating in the webinar. We are glad that your question kept coming. The recorded version of the webinar will be available on www.youtube.com/user slash eclub online soon. You can go through, you can log in and just have the recorded version of the webinar. And once again, I would like to thank Amita. Thank you, Amita, for the inspiring session. And thank you, all
Thank
the
you.
attendees, and
Thank you,
have
Priyanka.
a nice evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Stop recording.